Find the domain of the rational function f of x, which is equal to x minus 5 over square root of x. And then we'll switch the numerator and denominator of this function f of x, make a new function g of x, which is equal to square root of x over x minus 5. And we'll find the domain of that rational function. And we'll compare the domain of these two functions. So to find the domain of the function f of x, first we're going to find the domain of the numerator. Numerator is just the polynomial function. From our prior knowledge, we know that the domain of the polynomial function is negative infinity to positive infinity, or we can say all real numbers. So entire number line can be the domain of the polynomial function. Then our denominator is a radical function. To find the domain of the radical function, we set the radicand greater or equal 0 and solve for x. So our radicand means whatever inside the radical. We set that greater or equal 0 and solve for x. That means it's all real numbers such that x has to be greater or equal 0. That means your domain is from closed interval 0 to open interval infinity. When we grab that, the domain is from 0 to infinity. Now we will put these two domains on top of each other to find the overlapping domain. So my first domain is negative infinity to positive infinity. My second domain we find in step 2 is from 0 to infinity. So it's somewhere down here. So the overlapping domain is these two colors, which is basically from 0 to infinity. So the overlapping domain is from 0 to infinity. Now to find the domain of the function f of x, from this overlapping domain, we have to exclude the x values, which makes this x values which makes or which can make this function f of x undefined. Here that's only one value x, so x makes f of x undefined, or we can say the denominator 0. So we're to exclude 0 from this overlapping domain. So my overlapping domain was from closed interval 0 to infinity, but we have to exclude 0. So instead of closed interval, we have to make that open interval. So the domain for the function f of x is open interval 0 to infinity. Now let's try to find the function domain for the function g of x. So first, my numerator is square root of x. The domain of square root of x is set the radicand greater or equal 0. That means it's from closed interval 0 to infinity. And when we draw that, that is this piece of the number line. Find the domain of the denominator. My denominator is x minus 5, which is a polynomial function. The domain of the polynomial function is from negative infinity to positive infinity. When you graph it, all real numbers. Let's place both of these domain on the same number line, and we can find the overlapping domain. So when we place them on top of each other, we get this piece, red and a green piece, is the overlapping part. So my domain is still, overlapping domain is still from 0 to infinity. But to find the domain of the g of x function from this overlapping domain, we have to exclude the x values which will make the denominator 0 or this function undefined. And that value is just x equals 5. So from this overlapping domain 0 to infinity, we will exclude 5. So to exclude 5, we're basically gonna put this checks here, a fancy sign. So my domain now is from closed 0 to open 5 union open 5 to open infinity, and this is the domain of the function g of x. Hope this will help you.